Hi there, my name is Kay Moon and I'm a Western astrologer and twin flame channel. And this is a video including a set of channeled messages that I've received about the closure of the union window that we just experienced that opened in January of 2022, peaked in January of 2023, and closed as we moved into January of 2024 with a 90-day extension that was impactful through the beginning of April of 2024. So I want to walk you through that. I know there's a lot of you who are a bit newer to this channel and consider yourself twin flames. This is a new construct for you. So I'm going to explain how it was revealed to me, and then I'll go into the messages. So those of you who have been with me for a while will recall that I read divine masculine and feminine as the god and goddess of Mount Olympus. We see Juno and Jupiter. Juno is currently recognized as an asteroid planetary body, and when I began reading astrology, I was really shown that the pathway that many divine counterparts would take would reflect or be reflective of what we see as Jupiter in the divine masculine energy and what we see as Juno in the divine feminine energy. The two of them are coming together, or came together, I should say, in January of 2023. And you see them here sitting together. And they tend to come together on a schedule of roughly every, I would say, 6 to 8 years, on average, 7. And so Jupiter's transit around the zodiacal wheel does take roughly about a year per sign. Juno moves a lot faster, and she'll move almost as a replica or higher octave of Venusian energy. And she'll switch signs roughly about every 40 days. However, she does slow down when she goes retrograde in a very significant way. And she'll spend about 9 to 11 months in a singular sign, really grounding and channeling the truths and the insights from that energy, dispersing of shadow from that energy, and leaning into the light side of that energy. We recently had a Juno retrograde, which is in part why there was an extension to the union window. And I'll show that to you in a moment. But the key here is that when these two astrological bodies come together in a conjunction, the frequency of their pull and their coming together can be reflected in divine connections here on earth, with an experience of feeling a pull toward the connection that begins 1 year before they're coming together and completes roughly 1 year after they're coming together, which is why this energy constitutes a window of time rather than a date on which everything is supposed to happen. Again, that window took place or opened in January of 2022 and closed January of 2024 with a peak in January of 2023. When union windows open and close, that experience is a discrete period of time where the magnetics of your connection can be on steroids, if you will. There can be a feeling of being pushed, pulled, poked, prodded toward your connection. And it's really important to make the distinction that it has nothing to do specifically with trying to get two people to get together, get married, buy a house, have kids, or whatever it is that you do. Your definition of, or perfect picture, as my meditation teacher would say, about union. It's really important to understand that this period of time is significant in that there's a lot of revelation and insights that come through the vibrational pull of the overlapping energy of two people, called the connection itself, that is signaling, hey, it is time for you to focus on removing anything that stands in between you and the unfoldment of this love. And so when this happens, you'll see lots of clarification around any childhood wounding. And many of you got that in 2022, 2023, into the beginning of this year. Clarification of any baggage you've been holding on from your exes, any trauma that has held you back from being anything other than loving, present, open, connected, trusting, and strong in your relationship to love. When these things show up, it can feel very daunting or quite draining. Some people get the experience of feeling so deeply triggered by it, it actually has them push away from the connection during these periods of time I've seen so that they can deal with everything that's come up. Others feel so drawn by these things and feel like the solution can be within the other person, or the two of them coming together would just solve everything. And they get a bit of hyper focus on the connection. And still, other people kind of recognize this is a time for some internal work. Let me balance this out and kind of deal with what's showing up that's causing me to feel like I can't have, I'm not worthy of, I can't participate, or I am locked out of this experience of love. So, if you've been with me for a while, you know that I have recommended a lot of tools leading up to this period of time in the different lunar updates, in the different panels I've hosted with recommended resources for you so that you know where to go to get anything that is standing in between you and divine love being experienceable here on earth out of the way, or resolved, or integrated so that you're capable of having the experience of this love while you're still incarnate. Yeah. So now that these union windows close, and maybe you've done some work on these things, maybe you've just gotten some revelation about these things, you now have the opportunity to take the next step in connection. So I just want to reiterate that union windows don't mean that people will or will not come together. They aren't guaranteed times for coming together. They are seasons when the pull of the connection via the frequency of love creates that demand within us to resolve anything that stands between you and becoming living love. In the state of living love, yes, these expanded love connections, called divine connections, do have greater potential to come together. But that state is also experienceable both in and out of union windows. It's just about resolving everything that stands in between us and it, and many will do it during a union window. And lots of us will do it after or in between. Your timing and your connection is your timing. There is absolutely nothing wrong, nothing late with how things are unfolding for you in your connection. So I wanted to make sure that I expressed that so that it was clear for those of you who are newer, those of you who have been with me for a while, have heard me say like things. Okay. Now that this union window has closed, so I'm going to bring up where we're at in present time. I want to give you a sense of where we were at as we began the year. So, up until about the end, I would say, of March, we had, there we go. So, the counterparts had this dynamic pull all through 2023. And as we began 2024, we saw Juno here in retrograde, and she operates as the wife, divine feminine energy. And we see Jupiter here in Taurus, and he operates as the husband energy. the counterpartship between the two of them being what's significant. We see the two of them in the same element, Earth, and that's because they were in the same element January, February, March. This is what created extension of this period of pull between counterparts. As we got into April, we saw Juno come out of this retrograde motion and really begin to move toward Libra, air sign, which is an energy that is in conjunct. So I'll show you guys that. In conjunct is an energy that is a no conversation between two planetary bodies. So let me show you that. So we see Juno completing her retrograde as we get into the end of April. I believe it was 421 when she completed and began to move direct, in case that is significant to anything that's unfolded in your connection. It was April 21st. And now we see she's moving forward and out of the retrograde zone. And I'll show you guys now, present time. Here we go. Okay. So as we've moved into the month of June, we see Juno has continued to move out of her stay in Virgo. She's now roughly mid degrees of Virgo. Jupiter has fully completed his stay, his roughly 1 year stay in Taurus. We see Jupiter now in Gemini, and we see the two of them heading for a formation we as astrologers call a square. Squares bring up aspects, is an aspect of tension where it can be difficult for the two energies to access each other and harmonize together without some level of ingenuity and motivation for transformation in order to be able to collaborate. And so some of you may have felt this tension as we closed out the first quarter of this year, a sense of not in sync, not on the same page. Others of you will have noticed, life is just inviting you to study different things, take on different foci in this season. And so at each lunar update for the Divine Counterpart Collective, I've provided some intel and insight into what those foci might be and how to work with those in real time. I would also say it is important to pay attention to anything inside of you that resonates with both divine feminine and divine masculine energy as you listen to those updates, so that you can recognize the union energy within and open the pathway for that to be reflected in your external world. Union within, union without. Divine masculine and feminine within, together within, together without. Okay. So continue to do that as it works for you. I have said many times that you will find that sometimes these roles can flip flop. Sometimes, they're not based on your gendered bits or your assigned gender or chosen gender or transitioning gender. They're not based on the bits and bobs between our legs. These are energies that we all have access to. And so the more you can find and come out of polaric energy and find union energy, the easier it is going to be to recognize union energy when it's reflected back to you in the third dimension and when it's unfolding for you, and how to grasp the reins and move forward with it. There are times and seasons where each counterpart in a connection will operate in what I call polaric energy. Polaric energy is when you feel completely and exclusively in one or the other, divine feminine or divine masculine. There are reasons for that according to your own journey with your person and your own soul's evolution here on earth. Your lessons in your leadership will dictate when you need to be in exclusively one or exclusively the other. However, I have noticed that the more we rest in polar energy, I am divine masculine, they are divine feminine. The more we cling on to those types of experiences, unfortunately, the more they perpetuate separation. So it'll be important as you continue your journey to look for where you have both unfolding inside of you, unless, of course, you're in a season where you need to take a deeper dive with one or the other, and that certainly happens. But the original state is always oneness, it was always union. Okay. Now that this union window is closed, you'll find some new pathways open up. So I want to go back to where that union window began so that you can understand the frequency of where we are headed. So this is where we started. Each union window then creates a doorway or a gateway via which counterparts can use, or a map, I guess is a better word, a map that counterparts can use to access union energies by operating in alignment with what the map says. Because the counterparts at this union window came together in the sign of Aries, there's a lot of lessons, a lot of leadership, a lot of growth that once participated in via Aries energy, it will start to recalibrate the frequency of your connection for union energy. And so, for this reason, it'll be very important because between now and the next union window, which doesn't open until late 2027, with a peak in late 2028 and a closure in late 2029, between now and then, Aries is the way we access this energy, union energy. So it's counterintuitive. It is almost a reverse psychology trick from the universe in certain ways, but it is also the way you come to recalibrate. You come to recalibrate the frequency in your connection, the magnetics of your connection, for union energy to unfold between you and another person in whatever way that's going to look for the two of you. So, since the access point is Aries, it's critical we understand what this means. And this is where the channeled messages in particular start to come in. So, I'm going to break some things down. We understand that Aries represents selfhood, individuality. It is the experience of new birth or being newborn. It is the first sign of the zodiac. It is not self-centered unless it's in shadow. It is centered in itself with trust and faith that others are centered in themselves, so that two healthy and whole individuals can come together and be greater than the sum of their parts. Aries energy is energetic, it is active, it is motion and movement oriented in the third dimension. It's an energy that specifically deals with behaviors rather than emotions. It's not a water sign or thoughts. It is not an air sign. It is about taking action. And so with this, we see a lot of where there has been 5D and 3D separation consciousness about connection. This period of time is when we begin to see the collapse of the separation and the beginning of a merge through the behaviors and actions that call down the 5D into the present through your body so that you're living in it rather than only experiencing it spiritually. No duality. Aries is a singular energy as the first sign of the zodiac. It represents the energy of oneness, singularity. Okay. Aries energy as well, specifically in neutrality, deals with movement, forward movement, action, momentum. Okay. It is outward projected motion. There's nothing really internal about it. That being said, in light, we see Aries energy being about passion and ambition and motivation. I always like to say that ambition is where the spirit meets your ego and tells you how far you can go in this lifetime. It is also the energy in shadow. Yes, of course, it can be warlike. It can be antisocial even. Aries energy can be selfish in shadow, but that's not necessarily what we're cultivating. Here, we can find ourselves in those positions if we are repressing Aries, the light side of Aries expressing itself through us. But if you find yourself in rage or any of those kind of separative versions of Aries shadow energy, just know that you always have the choice through your actions to come back to the light. And it's through the light side of these energies that we will start to see movement in the third dimension around union between now and the next union window. It's by taking on Aries behaviors and activities. The last thing I'll say that Aries is representative of is masculinity, manhood, constructs of what it means to be male. It is the first masculine sign of the zodiac. And so within that, we have a lot of movement between now and the next union window for the masculine energy in connection, both within yourself and within another. Okay. So, some of the channeled messages, now that we've discussed what Aries means, and that Aries is the pathway or the gateway through which union energy becomes accessible here in the third dimension. Some of the things that I've channeled, well, I'll share everything I've channeled, but the way this opens up for some people are as follows. For some, you're going to see that there's a lot less of a pull from the connection. You'll have integrated the work and steps that needed to be taken, and you can now establish a new life in this elevated relationship to love that may include union with your counterpart, union with work and mission, union with your community, even union with your own family. You'll be able to look back now from this position and see that emotionally and mentally who you were at the end of 2021, just before this union window opened, and who you are now, mid 2024, now that it is well and truly closed. You're two different people when it comes to how you participate in the experience of love. You may perceive life and love very differently now. And as such, your motivations and actions are very different. Where they come from within you is very different. This time may feel like a time of freedom and release from the lessons love invited you to integrate. And now that you've taken the breath of love in, you can breathe the breath of love out. It's a chance to remake your external world in the reflection of the elevated, integrated, singularized, centered in self, you, from the lessons you learned during the union window. Others are going to feel less of a pull from the connection. And because of the distraction of the pull and the way the pull felt confronting, challenging, you may have found you spent a lot of your time during the union window feeling overwhelmed by your emotions. No worries, no judgments. Different transits facilitate that for all of us at different times. And if it happened for you to be the union window energy of 2022 and 23, now that the pull is less intense, you're going to find you have new bandwidth to take the action steps needed so that you can focus on what was revealed as areas needing attention and work, to integrate the love and cascade it through the many areas of your life: family, work, children, your educational path, your business, your community, and mission for service. For both of those groups, there will be those of you called to the path of love with one person and those called to the path of love regardless of the person. For those of you called to the path of love with a particular person in this lifetime, you'll see that on the other side of this union window, the purity of the love of this caliber. You're also going to see all the places where your ego structure got in the way. You'll have seen some very precise and specific mirrors that may have been extremely humbling during the union window and come up for purge and release over this 2-year period. This time would have also revealed to you how unbreakable and unchangeable a love like this is, how it exists regardless of the third dimensional conditions of distance, time, circumstance, or behaviors of the person. It would have also had you confront everything in you that's everything in you that thought certain conditions would break your ability to feel love: distance, time, circumstance, or behaviors of the person, communication or non-communication, kids or not kids, health challenges, and more. For those of you called to the path of love in this lifetime with a particular person, you'll have come to much greater clarity that in a contest between conditions and love, love always wins. And now that the union window is closed, it's time to take what you've learned about love and make it a condition that your life has to conform to in the way it engages with you and you engage with it. This is how you create your life at the frequency of living love. So it's not just in your heart, but your whole life is a reflection of it. And in your life, these are the conditions that pave the pathway for either deeper union, if you and your counterpart are together, or coming together in the third dimension, if that is something that you aspire to. Now, those of you called to the path of love, regardless of the person, this is a time where you'll be able to see the truth of what you experienced with the person you may have previously identified with the label twin flame. And what about the connection was actually just you, your capacity, your ability to love, your openness to love, your gift for experiencing divine love while incarnate, your faith in love, your elevated ability to live for love rather than die for it, to remove remove your bad habits for it, deal with your childhood wounds for it, handle your issues with money for it, and elevate your consciousness for it. Even if your emotional love for the person is no longer present, no shame. It doesn't mean that person wasn't the right person for you. It means that there are other loves and other places where you're going to be able to share this love in this lifetime. The mark of love is still in your frequency. It's now a part of your energetic signature and sets you up with a beacon for higher level love with the next person. The truth is not that you'll never love like that again. The truth is that you'll never love at a lesser level again. And your consciousness has expanded to more of its full capacity for experiencing love. And as such, it's like your clothes from when you were 8 years old. You fit them when you were 8, but now your body's much bigger. And so all clothes going forward have to be a match for your adult shape. Now that this union window has closed, you'll see maybe a little bit of grief as the last of that person's energy leaves your space and you wish each other well on your respective journeys. But mostly, it may feel more like peace and liberation, a bit of a psychic neutral zone and 0 point. For all, this eclipse and the transit of the South Node through Libra at the beginning of January, through the beginning of January of 2025, this is a season in which we're all invited into releasing identification with the label twin flame. I've talked about this in the last set of channeled messages I provided for twin flames, but I'm going to reiterate. For many, the duality in the concept itself, twin, two, it's a concept that precludes union even in its name. Further, the collective consciousness around the concept and the collective agreement about that being synonymous with running, chasing, separation, silence, pain, suffering, in and out, wounds, wounding. All of the collective consciousness about the subject are agreements that act as a life force, a stronghold, a system that makes those who participate in it actually reinforcing it with the experiences of their own life. So if you don't want to experience that, you can drop the label, is what I was shown. Okay. As more and more shed those beliefs and shed the identification of their experience of love as a duality experience, as that is shed, it is actually going to make anyone still participating in it, it's going to make it easier for them to drop it and come to clarity and truth for themselves sooner. It is also for those of you who do have union, something that you would like to cultivate with a particular person. It's going to allow you to have a lot less challenge in your connection. Buying into the concept is an act of co-creation, and it invites your connection to perform in resonance with the collectively agreed upon concept. So, in other words, it's going to be what you say it is. But if you agree with duality and separation and you call it by a dualistic and separative name, it will perform like that for you. This is how creation works for divine creator beings incarnate. If you say it's twinship, which is also known as duality, it will be duality until you choose to call it something different. Now, that being said, my guidance has been to continue to talk to you about love, only using the twin flame label to help those who are a bit out at sea on these concepts find a place where they can reset and recalibrate their internal compass. My guidance has been to talk to you about how love works, how love brings together, how love unifies, how love makes whole that which has been halved, and how love releases the past and closes out what many identify as karma and karmic loops, how love organizes, harmonizes, and brings order to that which was disintegrated, disjointed, and chaotic. My guidance has been to talk to you about how love creates peace where there has been strife and is a standing beacon of truth where there has been distortion. Okay. Now, this new era between now and the next union window has the doorway to union in the third dimension. Like I said, that is through the doorway of the self. That's the sign of Aries. And the last doorway was similar in 2014 and 15. It was in the sign of Leo, which is about self sovereignty. FYI, like I said, the next doorway does not open up and it will be in the sign of collaboration and partnership. That is Libra. That will not be until late 2027, won't peak until almost 2029. So, this new era between now and the next union window has a doorway to union that's accessible in the third dimension, like I mentioned earlier, through Aries energy, Aries behaviors, Aries activity. As such, your movements through this period before the next union window opens are guided to be your own movements, to come from within you as your own authentic truth, independent of what's happening or not happening in the connection. For union to unfold or be sustained during this period of time, this is going to take a lot of faith and trust that you cannot mess your connection up, that allowing movement to be your own is an active union in and of itself, because it is union with ourselves. And that's what creates the frequency required during this season for union with another to be aligned. Now, for some, there will be major self individuation that needs to happen with your counterpart. Your parents or your family or your friends or your identity at your job. You may have lived a life where many of your choices, from your career to the car you drive to where you live, the style of hair and clothes you have, or even your beliefs or what you eat, has been dictated by forces external to you. You've done what you've done without questioning. And so this period is going to usher in some questioning. As the very Aries question arises, is this really me? Some of you have already begun this process. Some of you are very aware some of the things you're doing are not you. But for you to create the state of living love required for accessing union with a counterpart or mission or God or yourself, you'll need to get some clarity about who you are independent of the external forces, and then take actions and movement of your own to establish yourself as yourself. In doing so, you reset the magnetics of your connection for union. Now, for others, you're really already clear about who you are and who you aren't. The self individuation happened a while ago. Your job is to take on action and movement to make yourself known in the world on your own terms. You know who you are and who you want to be in this world. And now your journey is to play a much bigger game. This may ring true for you if you recognize that you've been playing it safe. Now's the season for taking bigger risks, acting on your ambition to establish what you've come to give the world, rather than just having it be an idea. Your independence is going to come from leaving behind the safety of what you've established, as it has become too easy. It's become rote. There's either nothing left to achieve on the path you're on, the career you've got, or the place you're in where you provide service, or you've just been playing it small. And it's time to release that for the freedom of the unknown. In doing so, if this is you, you redefine not only yourself, but your life. And in the process, you reset the magnetics of your connection for union. And in still for others, or maybe even for all, this will be a sharp departure from traditions, legacies, stories, meanings you've given your life based on and rooted in past experiences. There's a naivete to Aries energy. They can be quick to anger, but they can also be quick to forgive. The path for you is to let go of things that defined who you are and why you live the way you do. For many, this is going to be a total life overhaul. And you may have already, that may already be underway, where it's like you were excused from your job, excused from your home, excused from a relationship. It's like somebody hit the reset button on your life all at once as we enter into this next stage. Some examples include, like I said, releasing the identity of being a mom. And so your life has to work certain ways and limited in certain ways, right? Because maybe your kids are now grown, they have left the house. Caveat, what I just said is specifically for women who have kids not living at home, who aren't necessarily in need of your guidance and protection, right? But if if your kids are grown, give yourself that permission to paint, to travel, to start that business. Or for some of you, the identity of being a graduate of a specific school governs everything you do in life, whether it's the title of doctor or being a graduate of the Sorbonne. Others, it's culture, class, gender, or a generational label that it's time to release the limitations of second child, firstborn, last child. If you've got anything in the world of your identity that you're allowing to dictate what you can and cannot do, be, or have, to create union in this season, you're going to be required to put it down. Not to say that ageism or homophobia or racism isn't real, for example. It's to say that you're going to have to release that as a predicate for why you cannot be, do, or have what you want in your life and stand in the liberation of possibility for yourself. Stand in the truth that love makes all acts of creation possible. All. Even that thing that you believe you're locked out of because of history, traditions, legacies, what happened in the past, what happened to your ancestors or your parents, meanings that exist in the world that you've agreed with, that you've picked up and put on yourself, where those identity stories have limited your ability to be, do, or have what you want. This new beginning in Aries energy, the sign that specifically deals with identity, it's going to require you to put them down so that you can build an identity that is solely sourced from love. Additionally, this next season of access to union being through the gateway of the total self, another thing that is important to understand is how unique the pathways are going to be, how individualized they'll be, and how much more personal they're going to be than they've ever been. One person's path to union is going to be another person's path to separation in this energy. So it is going to be critical to turn up the volume on your own intuition and truth and allow other people to do the same and stay in our own lanes, especially for those of us who are readers or guides and serve in this way and have taken on the responsibility of providing guidance for others. As we embark in this next segment of energy, the truth is there will not be one pathway, plan, strategy, or collective thing to do. The old templates of everyone has to let go of their connection, everyone has to focus on exclusively their own self or their healing, or everyone has to go through separation or some running and chasing before coming into union, or that the divine feminine has to be as a person in a female body specifically, has to be the leader in the connection. These collective wave experiences and templates have indeed collapsed out of many people's soul blueprints. And they are continuing to collapse as we speak throughout 2024. I've been shown there are going to be some peak releases at the solstice on June 21st, the next equinox on September 22nd, with the final release at the last solstice on December 21st. These collapses of these old storylines where if you're a twin flame, this is how your life goes, this is how your story goes, this is how it plays out. For some of you, this you are already in some sort of union with your counterpart. And the work really is, how do we become an individual identity together? Others of you, it's really about solidifying a new and rebirth and phoenixized version of yourself. As we move through the collapsing of those old ideas about quote unquote twin flame, you may experiencing a bit of a die-off experience, detox, or even a herxing type of response that can create so many different things in the human experience emotionally, such as bursts of energy, elation, insight, a drain of energy, emotional intoxication, and a bit of like feeling a sensation of floating, emotional blankness, numbness. So give yourself as much space and time as you need to allow for these releases as they come up. For many, time in nature will help. For some people, sleep is just going to make the difference. For other people, somatic processing. Still, for others, it's going to be exercise. Again, Aries is going to make your process personal. So trust whatever you're guided to do. The only thing that will pertain to everyone in this season is that everyone's pathway is going to be personalized, individualized, customized to what they need at any specific leg of the journey. So if you and a few twin flame friends are noticing changes, or that you're doing seemingly very different things or feeling very different ways after being on the same path for a while, it is not that one person is ahead of you or behind you in growth at all. It's that your connections are requiring different inputs at different times. And your guidance is showing you different steps to take at different times. Some of you may have even noticed this as we rolled into 2022 and the union window opened, the divergence in pathways unfolding to liberate you from these limiting storylines so that you could step into the next arc of what it is you're here to do. Okay. And if you read for people like I do, and you notice stories and energies are just kind of all over the show, there isn't anything wrong. It's the way this season is supposed to be for this next several years, is what I was shown. And this is each person accessing their stepping stones to union via the platform of their own intuition, their own connection is guiding them. Now, this season, until the next union window, is very spiritual and moves spiritual energy into action very quickly. That's a very Aries trait. So when you get the vibe about what you need to do, where you need to go, and it's not coming from fear, it's not about moving you away from something that scares you, but rather instead, it's about moving you toward empowerment by confronting something that scares you. Trust it. Just make sure you, before you ask others about it, you have your own mechanism for discernment for it, especially if you occupy the polaric energy of divine feminine. The final position for divine feminine, as we have closed out this union window, has been an extended stay in the sign of Virgo. So discernment is key for her frequency as we get all the way through the late 2020s. Many have found strength in their pain, both through the masculine and feminine programs from the last union window to this one. The previous union access through Leo, and that began 2014, 2015, and then extended all the way until 2022. That Leonine energy did require a lot of identification of pain as a necessary tool to understand boundaries, personal sovereignty, and creative authority. We had to know where it hurt to be clear about where power was being used incorrectly in our live streams, both with others and ourselves. We also needed to understand legacy themes that plagued our inner child so that we could shed those and create new timelines to live into. So, all of the inner work, all of the processing of the past, all of the reprocessing of our pain stories, this was a necessary step in our journey. But as you can see, the narrative arc moves us now into a rebirth of individuality. Where is our passion? Where is our ambition? Let's put it into action. This new union access point through the sign of Aries is asking us to shift away from pain as our launch point for clarity and wholeness. It's time to focus on pleasure, passion, taking action. Since the access to union in this new era is focused on passion and ambition, given the light side of Aries and its planetary ruler Mars, it is necessary that we're able to experience that sensation of aliveness and an inner sense of drive. It's necessary to investigate what gives us access to more life force and take actions that bring that invigoration into our lives. But in order to find that, pain cannot be our compass or even our starting point anymore. We have to shift into pleasure, being where we are sourcing our ambitions from. What is it that gives us life? What is it that makes our lungs fill with more air? What lifts our chin toward the horizon? What allows us the distinct feeling of God within, divinity alive and moving within us, flowing out of us and into how we interact with the world? Action being key, as Aries is about action, movement, motion, outward projected life force in its divinely neutral states. So, drilling down to divine masculine and divine feminine. And our divine masculine energy fields, this will be about resetting and finding our inner compass, finding the source of our divinity through the impetus to act in our lives. What do we have motivation to act on? What no longer motivates us? Where is there movement in our lives? Where are we incited to create movement? Because what we're engaged in gives us even more new life. There is a new light flooding the divine masculine templates. Original light is the phrase I keep hearing. It's a return to source light and our inner God light as our fuel for action in our lives. And in more humanistic terms, this will be a foundation for right use of masculine energy and a redefinition of masculine energy. For people who identify as men, this will be a recognition and ignition of who they really are. Through this energy between now and the next union window, we'll see an expansion in men's capacity to live in the truth of who they are and what they are here on earth for. An ignition and recognition and redefinition of purpose through paying attention to the stepping stones of passion. Many of the old paradigms of masculinity are falling off divine masculine timelines and energetic templates. They are also collapsing and becoming obsolete so that men are unable to source purpose and identity and direction from those old definitions of manhood. This will be the open gateway for those who identify as men to be free to be a true self, the self God actually built inside of you, to be at the level of spirit coming out through your human form, not what society told you to be. This will give men a chance to radiate identity and purpose from the inside out, from the God self to the human self, rather than construct and derive identity and purpose from fitting in with what women dictate they should be, or generally generationally bygone patterns of the fathers from the outside in. So as we drop performative masculinity in these ways, there becomes this opportunity for true self to come forward, for connection, for love, and for experiencing the third dimension as the God incarnate. Now, I'm going to talk about more of that in part two, because there's a lot more to be said there. But generally speaking, moving now into the divine feminine energy templates, there is a deeper grounding into the physical form and the corporeal as this is going to constitute a coming out of fifth dimensional consciousness and into the world of form, with all of the spiritual and emotional growth of the last cycle being accessible for motivation and implementation in the present. Now, for some, it's going to feel a bit like there's a closing off of access to the intuitive space until greater implementation or action has taken place. A bit of a, you already know what you need to know. Stop looking for more information and act on the information you already have. Now, there can be a bit of a psychic quietness here if this is where you're working. Now, for others, this will be an opening of the intuitive space and a flurry of intuitive expansion as your clairs open at the next level, allowing greater spiritual capacity on demand, so to speak. You may already have been in a lot of action and notice that your spiritual gifts are unfolding with some velocity now to match the unfoldment of your activities in your lived reality. Gifts you didn't even know you had may come online in the moment or on demand, so to speak, because the situation requires them. Now, for divine feminine dominant folks, you're going to be called to pull forward in your connection, especially if your connection has had what you may have identified as a stuckness or a looping of coming together, pulling apart, or never getting past a certain point. There is a call in the energies for you to take action and move forward with the understanding that the invisible tether that connects the two can never be broken. But occupying the same position you've been in is going to cause some redundancy in cycles. This new energy is calling for you to occupy a different frequency in the third dimension. And in this way, the magnetics in your connection get reset. Okay, allowing space for your partner to come out from behind you and instead ride next to you. Okay. Generally speaking, as more release the concept and construct called twin flame and its associated duality, we are collectively going to see much greater lightness and ease in both the divine masculine and feminine fields with the experience of love. In other words, the connection is just going to get easier. We'll also see greater union energy accessible. It's interesting because as I'm seeing it with clients, those who are releasing identification with the construct twin flame and its associated collective meanings and experiences, they're finding union activities speed up in their third dimensional realities. And for some of my clients who are already in some sort of third dimensional partnership, I have seen this become quite triggering because there's a lot of demand in some of their connections for them to do very different things, maybe not so everything together, the both of us all the time. And that's okay. Trust that the more you inhabit and embody your individualized, unique expression of God within on the outside, the stronger the connection actually does get. Okay. I've also seen for those who are identifying in some sort of unified state, that for many of you, your lives are integrating at a very rapid pace, meaning There's been a lot of movement in the third dimension, like travel, relocation, moving in together, moving to other countries together, starting business together, as there's a merging of ambitions, where in the past you may have been on very different pages with enthusiasm with regard to family and starting a family, or very different pages with regard to building a business or doing art together or creative service projects or political and social good projects. In this new energy, you may notice that there is a merging of desires and that it's new, is very different. And you're going to have to rewrite some of your scripts for trust based on what's the best that can happen rather than, well, here's where we used to be, how we used to be. Okay. And for others of you where your ambitions have been different for a very long time, and thus in y'all are together, but your ambitions have stalled because of fear of what doing things separately might do to the connection, you're going to find that you have a renewed inner urgency to get on with what's yours to bring forth. Also, you'll find that there's much greater acceptance for another having their individuality within the connection, admiration for what they're doing as an expression of Source incarnate. You're going to experience some appreciation that the ambition they're expressing, while not yours, is definitely a true soul expression of them. And you'll find your ways to cheer them on without creating negative story about the fact that it doesn't center around, revolve in, or include the connection being the sole source of their fulfillment and expression. Okay. There's a real opportunity for dissolution of insecurity energy, magnification of individual expressions of source together, where you can have what you want, I can have what I want, and they don't have to be the same things in order for us to be together. And this is an expansion based on the previous union frameworks through the Leonine energy. So it builds on that. All right. So this is part one of a two-part set of channeled messages. This first part is exclusively kind of overall where we all go from here, from the close of this union window in 2024 all the way through 2028-ish, late 2027, when the next union window opens. Doesn't peak until late 2028, early 2029. And so I wanted to make sure that I shared these things with you so that as you're watching a lot of this more individualized energy bubble up and surface and the die off of these old stories, there was some clarity about what's happening, how it's happening, why it's happening. Okay. And that your story is going to be very personal and very unique. Certainly, your astrological chart can really help you bring together some disparate pieces, validate some of your intuition, and also know that you don't necessarily have to look at your chart if you've already been given a lot of clarity. I would say the next thing to do is to act on that. All right. Thank you so much for watching, liking, subscribing. And for those of you who take the time to leave comments, I really appreciate it. It helps other people really just get that little like, oh, I'm not alone and I'm not crazy as they read through what you may be experiencing. I have noticed for some reason, very, very long comments. YouTube does seem to automatically delete those even after I click approve on them. So I would say, share what you're guided to share, but if this is going to be like a diary, like I just don't want you to feel like you've wasted your time since YouTube seems to, for reasons unknown to me, I approve them. They just get deleted. Okay. In part two, I'm going to get into greater detail about What's going on in the divine masculine energy fields? Because there's a lot of shifting and change that has already begun and is going to accelerate in 2025, 2026, and 2027. There's also a lot because that shifting and changing is happening. Those of you who have greater affinity for experience with divine feminine energy, there's that's going to mean that there's a lot of change for you too. There's a lot of shifting in your own masculine energy, and there will be shifting with a counterpart as well. Take great care and bye for now.